whoever gets into government in 2029 has to massively overhaul our country and overhaul the state, because we're in a disastrous situation. People are being thrown in jail for Facebook posts, but we've got these appalling grooming gangs who have raped tens of thousands of girls. They've not all been brought to justice. It's been covered up. We've got a disastrous economy which is going down the drain, and it's not just Rachel Reeves is incompetent, which she is. It's also the Bank of England, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the Treasury. They're all responsible. So I think a MAGA movement in Britain has to be about completely changing the way our country is run. We've got to get rid of all this Blairite stuff like the Human Rights Act, the Climate Change Act, the Constitutional Reform Act, which created the Supreme Court. I mean, why are judges making political decisions like which refugees should be allowed into our country? They shouldn't be making those decisions. So what I'm saying, Darren, is what's really important to me is that the movement is actually calling for that kind of change, because that's how bad it is. The British state is deeply rotten.
In her statement, Liz Truss vehemently criticises the current state of the UK under the leadership of figures like Keir Starmer, even though she does not name him directly. By referring to the country's situation as disastrous, she implies that Starmer and his allies in the Labour Party are responsible for the deteriorating state of affairs. Truss points to various aspects of governance, such as people being jailed for Facebook posts and the grooming gangs covered up, as symptoms of a society and government led by incompetent or negligent leaders, potentially including Starmer. These accusations suggest a failure in addressing critical issues of free speech, justice, and the protection of citizens. By linking these events to the economy, she implies that under Starmer's influence, Britain is headed toward further decline, with no solutions in sight. Truss's comments also directly target the workings of the UK government, highlighting the failure of institutions like the Bank of England, the Office for Budget Responsibility, and the Treasury. This statement positions these institutions as corrupt or ineffective, further insinuating that Starmer's leadership, and the broader political establishment he represents, has led to a situation of mismanagement and incompetence. Truss makes a bold call for a MAGA movement in Britain, urging a complete overhaul of the political system, which could be interpreted as a direct challenge to the way Starmer's party operates. The need for such a radical shift implies that current leaders, including Starmer, have failed to make meaningful progress or improvements in the country's direction. By advocating for the dismantling of laws like the Human Rights Act and the Climate Change Act, she portrays the existing framework of governance as deeply flawed, and thus indirectly questions the policies and priorities that Starmer and his party may endorse. Finally, Truss criticizes the role of judges in immigration decisions, asking why they have the power to decide which refugees can enter the UK. This is a direct criticism of the current legal system, which she may perceive as being influenced by figures like Starmer, who are seen as more lenient on immigration issues. Her remark that the British state is completely rotten encapsulates her disdain for the way the country is being governed and reflects her belief that leadership figures, potentially including Starmer, have failed to protect the values and interests of the British people. Through this analysis, Liz Truss paints a picture of a nation in disarray under the current leadership and emphasizes the urgent need for a radical transformation of both political and legal institutions, many of which she suggests are failing under figures like Keir Starmer.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. In what is supposed to be a honeymoon period for a new government, the Prime Minister has sacked his Chief of Staff, forced his City Minister and Transport Secretary to resign, whilst Number 10 has been briefing against the Pensions Secretary, Home Secretary and Education Secretary. Is it not time that the Prime Minister accepts that the root causes at the heart of this government are with him, not them?
We just won a landslide victory, and we've got a massive majority. We're getting on with the job. Mr. Speaker, I don't think we saw. Look at the sheer number of ministers that they got through on a yearly basis, causing instability in every conceivable department.
In this exchange, Andrew Snowden criticizes the Prime Minister's leadership, and the internal instability within the government. But by implicating Sir Keir Starmer indirectly, he highlights broader concerns about the political climate. Snowden suggests that, despite the honeymoon period often granted to new governments, the Prime Minister has already been forced to sack key members of his team, such as the Chief of Staff, City Minister, and Transport Secretary. This portrays the government as struggling with internal conflicts and a lack of control. Snowden further asserts that Number 10 has been leaking negative information about several senior cabinet members, such as the Pension Secretary, Home Secretary, and Education Secretary, which suggests a government in disarray. By focusing on these high-profile resignations and internal leaks, Snowden implies that the root causes of the dysfunction within the government lie with the Prime Minister, but this is also a subtle jab at Starmer and the broader political establishment. His critique suggests that the government's failure to manage its affairs effectively is a reflection of weak leadership and poor decision-making, both of which are often associated with political figures like Starmer. Although the opposition leader is not directly mentioned in a derogatory way in this exchange, Snowden's emphasis on the instability caused by the Prime Minister's actions serves to indirectly cast doubt on Starmer's ability to bring stability or offer an alternative. On the other hand, when Sir Keir Starmer responds by defending the government's massive majority in the work being done, his statements reveal his confidence in his party's position. However, the lack of specific answers to the criticisms raised by Snowden weakens his defense, leaving him open to further attacks. Starmer's insistence that the government is getting on with the job, despite the turmoil, paints a picture of a leader trying to maintain control in the face of mounting instability. But his failure to directly address the issues Snowden raised further emphasizes his inability to effectively manage the internal crises within his own ranks. By suggesting that the Prime Minister's actions have undermined the government, Snowden effectively sets the stage for a broader criticism of Starmer's leadership, making it clear that if the current administration is failing, Starmer's leadership could only make things worse. Thus, Snowden's remarks, while focused on the Prime Minister, subtly position Starmer as being part of the broader issue of instability, suggesting that the opposition has no real answers to the country's problems. Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the content. Share your feedback in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos. Also, join our free Telegram group link in the description for uncensored discussions on important issues.